Hi everyone. So for Mia Autumn's facilitation of discussion, we did chapter 26 of Artistic Giftedness. Just a quick overview. We're going to be discussing the characteristics of gifted children in visual arts. We're going to be talking about the composition of the artistically gifted, the origin of the artistic gifts, and the relationship between childhood giftedness and adult eminence. This chapter argues against the distinction and says that children are talent in an art form of as gifted. To start the presentation off, I wanted to put in a quote that stood out to me in the reading, and it reads, "What unites all children with artistic gifts is thus not the ability to draw realistically, but rather the ability to master one or more of the culture's norms of artistry at a very early age." And that's very important to keep in mind as we present our presentation. So the chapter wanted the reader to know the difference between gifted and talented. And it defined gifted as children who are advanced in abilities or have a high IQ. And talented are those children who show exceptional ability in an art from to an athletic area, and that's talented. So Winner in 1996 said that children with high ability in an art form are like academically gifted children in three respects. And those respects are they're precocious, which means they master the first step in their domain at a very early age, right? Rather than the average age. They have a range to master, meaning they are intensively motivated to make sense of their domain and show interest and a very high ability to focus. And lastly, they mark to their own drummer, which means they do not just learn faster than an ordinary child. They actually learn differently. They learn virtually on their own. They require minimum of scaffolding and often solve problems in their domain by themselves. And those children are very creative. So it talked about two levels of creativity, and we heard about these levels in our other course, Little C and Big C. Little C meaning that those children can solve problems in novel ways and make discoveries about their domains on their own, while Big C students, they involve changing their domain. Garner and Simonton says that the creators do not make domain-altering changes until they worked for at least 10 years in their area, and thus those children cannot be domain creative. So the characteristics of children gifted in virtual arts. Children who are gifted in drawing are not just more advanced than the typical child in their milestones. Rather, they draw in a qualitative different way. Milbrath did a study which included 8 artistically gifted children over 10 years. And then she also compared a group of artistically gifted children between ages 4 and 14 to a normal control group. And what she figured out was that those artistically gifted children are guided figuratively rather than operationally. And this just means that figurative knowledge learners, they have the ability to grasp those static physical properties of objects. And operationally knowledge, or the process, is the ability to analyze and transform those objects. Another distinction will be while figurative knowledge involves representation, operational knowledge involves interpretation. Some more characteristics that was discussed in the chapter was that artistically gifted children see the world differently. They encode visual information more accurately than a typical child. They see the world less in terms of concepts and more of terms of shapes and surface features. They have superior visual memories. They attend more to the act of drawing itself. And they can see when something looks very wrong to them, which that leads to discovery about how to represent the world on paper in their own way. So what does this mean? To Milbrath, it means that they are better at seeing things, remembering things, and doing things. While the typical child, constrained to draw what they know about objects, gifted children, artistic children seem to override what they know and depict what they see, which means they, at an early age, draw highly realistically. Rather, the typical child start drawing at age 2. Artistically gifted children, they capture shapes of objects. They add true to life details than most children. And they will also show a great deal of volume and depth in their drawing. And Milbrath found that gifted children succeed in drawing human figures between ages of 4 and 10. And lastly, we're going to continue with the characteristics of the artistically gifted. And then at the end, I'll show you the difference between the gifted child and then the typical child, so you can have a better visual of what I'm discussing. So lastly, Milbrath says that because artistically gifted students see the world in different ways, they're able to overcome the object-centered perspective that dominates typical children. And just note that children begin to make new specific drawings, and drawings also show mixed viewpoints. And like I said, the artistically gifted children's drawing very realistic. So when you're in the classroom and you see a child and realism is like coming off the paper, that is a very early indicator that they may be artistically gifted. And there is evidence that not all gifted students draw realistically, but in those cases, those children will draw in a cartoon-like way, and you will see that a lot. So to end part 1 of chapter 26, I wanted to show you the difference between the artistically gifted child's drawing and the typical child's drawing. So on the left, you will see the typical student, what they think they know about how to draw a person. Compared to the right, which is the artistically gifted, you can see that they focused on the depth and the shape of the objects and the way the girl's dresses and the hat she wears and how the man has the little collar. You could tell the difference between the two students of who's the typical child and who is artistically gifted. And the bottom picture shows the stages of just the artistic gifted student. So on the far left, they may start their drawing, their hand looking like that, but still paying attention to a hand has fingernails, a hand has fingers. And then moving to the middle, which as they get older, they start to become better with their drawings and be more realistic. And then lastly, as time progresses, they move to the far right, and you can actually see the hand itself. All right. So that concludes part 1 of chapter 26 of Artistic Giftedness. Just move on to part 2, and I hope you enjoy it.